All right, everyone. My name is Florian Rössler. I'm your host for this session. And with me today, we have Tonya Sims, who'll be talking about Faceoff fun with Python frameworks, FastAPI versus Flask 2.0. Tonya was voted into the Wisconsin Basketball Hall of Fame. I like that fact. Former professional and collegiate basketball player turned Pythonista. Tonya Sims is currently a Python developer advocate for Vonage. Tonya started her technology career working as an executive assistant for a leading financial investments company in their IT department. She transitioned into a computer operator role and started learning how to code. Eventually, she worked her way up from an entry-level position to earn roles as a software engineer and test and software developer contracting with some of the top financial service companies in Chicago. She's passionate about helping other engineers and loves to see people succeed. So welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. So everybody, welcome. Welcome to our fun face-off between FastAPI and Flask 2.0. So I just want to quickly cover what we are going to be chatting about during our time together. So we are going to go on a hero's journey. That's first and foremost. Hero's journey is a popular story structure made famous by Joseph Campbell using Greek mythology and other stories. And so I'll quickly set up our story, and we'll use this hero's journey format all throughout this talk. Then we'll start our fun face-off between FastAPI and Flask 2.0. And so during this face-off between these two Python web frameworks, here are some areas that we'll go over. We're going to talk about how to set up a quick Hello World application. We'll talk about HTTP methods, focusing on a post method. We're going to talk about automatic documentation, which is like an interactive documentation in the browser that will make your life a lot easier when you're debugging. And so we're also going to chat about how to do data validation in both Flask and FastAPI, and how something called PyData helps you with providing user-friendly errors when data is invalid. We'll talk about the templates folder used for serving up HTML files for web applications, and lastly, we'll cover running in production using WSGI or versus ASGI, and why you want to use one over the other. And lastly, we'll choose why you use FastAPI over Flask and vice versa. Lastly, make sure you stay until the end because I have a freebie for you. So sit back and relax, and let's go on this hero's journey together. So I feel your pain. Okay, imagine you're like banging your head against the wall at work, trying to choose between these Python web frameworks, Flask 2.0 versus FastAPI. And as if your day couldn't get any worse, your boss comes to you on a Friday, okay, with 15 minutes left in your day, and he says, I need a huge favor. And you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, like what could he possibly need right now before the weekend? And he says, we just want our biggest customer ever, and I need you to choose between FastAPI and Flask today. And you're like, today? You're not sure if you can do it because you have plans with your friends and family later on. So you commit the cardinal sin and you ask your boss, can I do it on Monday? And your boss looks very angry, and he starts shaking and trembling, and then his body becomes engulfed in a tornado, and he's swallowed right in the middle of it. His skin is like ripping apart, and he turns into the evil internet ice lady. And you're like, okay, what the shapeshifter heck is going on here? And she evilly laughs, ha, ha, ha. You will choose between Flask 2.0 and FastAPI today, or else I will use my powers to freeze the internet forever. So you quickly think to yourself, oh my God, if the internet is frozen, I won't be able to watch Avengers or binge watch Loki or Squid Games. Then you say to the evil internet ice lady, okay, I'll do it under one condition. I need to send a Slack message to someone. With malice in her voice, she asks, who might that be? And you say, my tech lead. So hi, I'm Tonya once again, and I'm a former pro athlete turned Pythonista. So along with Python, you may see some sports references today during this story. And as Florian said, I'm currently a Python developer advocate at Vonage, which is a leading communications API provider. You can use our APIs to build application using like video, voice, and text messaging, and much more. So before we continue with our story, and our FastAPI versus Flask 2.0 face-off. I just want to set some expectations. So I might go back to the basics sometimes because everybody here might be at different learning levels. And I don't know about you, but when I first started learning how to code, it felt like my head was going to explode, especially because I started learning how to code in C#. Thank God for Python. Yeah, so definitely type in the chat, like, what was your journey like when you first started coding and how is it going now? I would love to learn more about you. Like, you could even tell me who your favorite sports teams are, or if you've used like, FastAPI or Flask or Django or any other web Python framework. So just let me know in the comments and we'll talk about it after our talk. So back to our story. So you just finished messaging your tech lead, right? And she gave you like a major pep talk. She's like, you put in all this hard work and you've all the new things that you've learned over the last several months, like you can definitely do this challenge and save the internet. So now you're feeling super, okay, and you feel confident that you can pass this evil internet ice ladies challenge and save the world from frozen internet. So let our face-off of Flask 2.0 and FastAPI begin. The evil internet ice lady barks at you. She's like, tell me how Flask and FastAPI are like. Excuse me. And so you say, both are high performance and lightweight Python web frameworks. Okay, they are both micro frameworks and are stripped down without all the bells and whistles, so it allows for flexibility. Then she says, tell me how they are different. And you say, okay, like one is battle tested, the other one's a little newer. One comes with lots of built-in libraries like FastAPI, and then the other you have to install some extensions. So the evil internet ice lady scrunches her nose at you, and she then demands you to tell her how to get a quick Hello World application up and running in both Flask 2.0 and FastAPI. So you say, okay, there's two things to understand when running your Hello World application. The first are the first is a decorator, and decorators are functions which modify the functionality of other functions. And they start with the @ symbol followed by the name of the decorator. You continue. You can think of it like decorating a cake, right? It starts with something, then you modify it by adding the frosting and the flowers and the sprinkle and the drizzle or whatever else you put on your cake. The next thing to understand is a route. And so a route maps a function to a URL, so it knows which web page to take the user to making the request. You're on a roll and you're feeling more confident. Then you explain the code, right? As the evil internet ice lady gawks at you. And you say, okay, in Flask 2.0, things get much simpler than in previous versions of Flask. For example, route decorators were added for common HTTP methods like app.get, right? And it maps to the function home and returns hello world. And versions of Flask prior to 2.0, you'd have to pass in a list called methods and specify if it's a post or a get. And so this just gets served up on port 5000 by default, but you can always change the port if you like. Flask 2.0 is very similar to FastAPI with the simple get route. Okay, now from the beginning, FastAPI uses an HTTP method in the route, like here at app.get. In FastAPI, all the HTTP verbs, get, post, put, delete, patch, etc., have their own decorators. And this just returns a dictionary with hello world, as you see here. In FastAPI, it gets served up on port 8000 by default, but you can change the port, and it just returns hello world, as you see. Both require little code to get a hello world up and running. So yeah, so this is virtually for a hello world application. Both are very similar. So the evil ice lady is looking even more evil, and she says, let's see what you know about running in development from the terminal. To run in development from the terminal in Flask, from the command line, you'd have to export your main Python file, which in this case is app.py. Then you would run the Flask development server by running Flask run. But if you want to make a code change, you have to keep restarting the development server every time. So in order to keep the development server running, you have to export development into a variable called Flask_env. With FastAPI, running in development is pretty awesome because FastAPI uses something called hot reloading. And hot reloading keeps the app running when you're making live code changes, so you don't have to keep restarting the development server. So it saves a lot of time. And so all you have to do is in FastAPI for hot reloading to keep that dev server running is to just pass in the reload flag in the terminal. And to start the server, you would type uvicorn main :app or whatever the name of your application name is. In this case, it's your application file. In this case, it's main.py. And you can think of uvicorn as a lightning fast server that allows your applications to perform faster. So hot reloading will save you lots of development time because your application reloads automatically anytime you change the code. Evil Ice Lady says, that is correct, but how would you execute an HTTP method like a post request? So HTTP methods are action-oriented verbs, right? We've covered already how to do a GET, which is read-only. Now let's look at a post method, okay, which creates data. So let's see how to do a post in both Flask and FastAPI. And a post request is just for creating a resource, like submitting data like a form to the server. And so let's say we have a list of dictionary called teams. So I told you, you can see a lot of sports references here. And here's the first one. So team name, Milwaukee Bucks, team player, Giannis, age 26. In previous versions of Flask, you'd have to pass in a list called methods to the decorator and specify the type of request, which is post. But Flask 2.0 makes it much easier, just like we saw with our GET request. And all you have to do is specify the HTTP method post in the decorator, like @app post. And this is the new team you're passing in, or you're creating, right? You're adding to your existing list of dictionaries. And you just return it using JSONify. And if you pull up the browser, and you go to this route, you actually get the 405 method not allowed error, because this is a post request. And by pulling up a web page, that's doing a GET request. So then you'll have to use an external tool like Postman, right, which acts as a client so you can see your post requests and the data that you created in JSON format. Flask 2.0 is very much like FastAPI with one exception when it comes to post requests. So as I said earlier, FastAPI provides separate decorators, right, for each HTTP method. So with FastAPI, you don't have to use a tool like Postman to test your post requests. So the evil internet ice lady interrupts you and she says, yes, I know with FastAPI, you don't need Postman. So tell me, how would you test your post request using automatic documentation? You take a deep breath, right? Because you know this answer will be important and you can't screw up now. So you explain automatic documentation. Okay, it's an interactive API documentation where you can see the results of your requests, such as post requests, and then interact with them in the browser by passing in data and seeing what you get back, or the response of that object. It's like magic, really, right? It's going to make your life easier, and you don't need tools like Postman with FastAPI. And this is how automatic documentation FastAPI works. So FastAPI is based on something out of the box called PyData. So there's no need to install it. Actually, it gets installed when you install FastAPI. PyData is a framework for easily modeling and validating data. It also does data validation and uses type hints, PyData does. And so you'll get much friendlier data validation errors, which reduces debugging time. And type hints are just what they sound like, right? They hint at the type of variable you're using. So and they also help document your code, and they help you catch bugs a lot sooner. So an example of a type hint would be this here. You have this player_ID variable with the type integer or int. So PyData also works together with something called Swagger UI for the automatic documentation. And this allows you to visualize and interact with your APIs in your browser, which is really cool. So to create the PyData model for automatic documentation, you use PyData, okay, and you import the base model from PyData. And then our class, you'll see in the next slide, is going to inherit from this base model. So inheritance works like this. If both of your parents have brown eyes, it's highly likely that you'll inherit their brown eyes as well. It's pretty much the same as an object-oriented programming. It works pretty much in a similar way. And so here we're actually importing this base model from PyData. We have a class called player that inherits from base model, and we're declaring variables inside as type hints, right? Like the first one, for example, is player underscore name of type string. And inside our function definition, we have a parameter we're passing in called request. That is of type player, which is our class name. And this is pretty much also a type hint. And it returns a dictionary. Okay, and so this is like the boring part of automatic documentation. So let's get to some really awesome stuff here. So to access your automatic documentation, you just go to your local host /docs. And you'll see a schema, right, which is like a skeleton for your model with your variables. And you can see which variables are required or optional. Like the required variables are the ones with the red stars next to them. You can try it out. There's a try it out button, and you can test your API endpoints by passing in values for the variables like we did here, like player underscore name, Michael Jordan, player underscore team, Chicago Bulls, player age, 32. So we're just passing in those values in the browser. And then you just click the execute button. Okay, and this will give you the response body, right? Which is really cool because this is a post request. And so this is what the server would receive for this post request. What's also cool is that you get back the curl request too. Excuse me. So it lets you talk to a server by sending data through the command line, and it generates it for you, so you don't have to write it from scratch. In Flask, there's no built-in feature for documentation. So you have to use something called, it's an extension called Flask Swagger, which requires a lot of configuration, and it doesn't come out of the box. So automatic documentation, it comes out of the box with FastAPI, and you don't have to install anything. So the evil internet ice lady creeps closer to you, and she sticks her icy finger in your face, and she demands you to tell her about data validation and why it's important. You continue. Well, data validation uses our friend PyData once again. An example of data validation FastAPI would be something like this. Okay, so let's say we create a class, right, once again, that inherits from that base model, once again, with type hinted variables inside of the class. And in our function, okay, we're checking to see if username is equal to Jane Doe and the password is equal to password 12345. If it is, if these both are true, then it's going to return a success message. Otherwise, it's going to fail. And so we pull up our automatic documentation once again for data validation, and we click the try it out button. And let's pass in none. Okay, we're going to pass in none to the username. So this should throw an error. We're going to keep the password the same and agree to the terms, which was an optional value, but we're just going to pass in true. And so PyData will work its magic, and you'll get a friendly error message telling you exactly what that error is. And in this case, the error says expecting the value, which is spot on the money because since we pass in none to the username, it's expecting the value. In Flask, PyData does not come out of the box, so you can install the powerful PyData package for data validation Flask by Flask PyData. So with FastAPI, you get PyData out of the box, which will give you friendly error messages and reduce the time spent debugging. The evil internet ice lady is furious, and she calls you a know-it-all, and then she asks, well, what if I want to create a web page? What's this templates folder business? Okay, you can feel you're coming down the home stretch now. Okay, you're more relaxed. And you say the templates folder stores your HTML files if you want to build a web application. In Flask, by default, Flask looks for the HTML templates in a templates folder. Okay, and it stores your HTML files. In Flask, you have to import render templates, and then you serve up the HTML file you want to render here, which in this case is index.html. In both Flask and FastAPI, you have to use Jinja to display your variables in HTML, and Jinja is just a templating engine that allows you to write code similar to Python to display HTML. And so here's an example, right, of your HTML file to display variables in Jinja. Just surround the variables with those double curly braces here. In FastAPI, you have to explicitly define the templates folder in your code. So let's look at an example. Like the first thing you can do, that you should do actually, is create the templates folder in your project directory, just like we did in Flask. Then in your code, you import the Jinja 2 templates from FastAPI. Okay, next you create a templates object or variable that you can reuse later. And this request type here you see in the function definition, this request type in FastAPI, you'll pass in that parameter. So it will help you know to pass in the requests in that parameter you want returned in the template. And then lastly, you use the template that you just created earlier to render and return a template response, passing the request and your player ID variable as like a pair of like, well, key value pairs, right, as the context. So you can access it in Jinja 2 just the same way that we did in Flask earlier. So with Flask, you know, you can just create this templates folder and call render template. There's really no need to explicitly define the templates folder like we did in FastAPI. So at this point, Ice Lady is standing directly in front of you, and you can smell her icy breath. And with her arms folded and her veins like popping out of her forehead, she grunts, "Last thing, running in production." So in FastAPI, production is pretty awesome because it uses something called ASGI, which is an interface, right, that sits between a Python web server and a framework. And ASGI is special because it allows for async Python applications, which makes them, you know, lightning fast. And so ASGI is asynchronous, okay? And this is how asynchronous applications work, if you're not familiar. So imagine this, right? You have like a bunch of requests coming in, and they don't have to wait for the other ones to complete or finish before they start processing. So they overlap. The requests overlap, and this is actually much faster. With Flask, they use something called WSGI, or the Python Web Server Gateway Interface, and it's been the Python standard for many years. WSGI is synchronous, okay? So it's the opposite of asynchronous. For example, imagine you have a bunch of requests coming, and each request has to wait for the others before it to complete. So notice there is no overlap here, so it's not as fast as being asynchronous. So ASGI makes for faster performance in your web applications because of the way that they process requests asynchronously. The evil Ice Lady is super angry, and she pulls out her sword and she puts it up to your neck and says, "Okay, I want you to choose a winner right now." So you think to yourself, okay, this is a trick question, and you're feeling conflicted. So this is how you answer it. My winner, this is how I would choose. Use Flask for this. It's battle tested, right? It's been around for a long time, and it's reliable. Use Flask if you want to get up a quick prototype of something. Use Flask for web application development. Use FastAPI for this. If you want to increase your development speed time and performance, definitely use FastAPI. Use FastAPI if you want to reduce errors and bugs because of lovely PyData and the type hinting it offers and the data validation. Use FastAPI for API development. I definitely feel like this, Fast API will become the standard in the near future, many years to come for API development. So definitely use it for that, and use Fast API if you want to get up and running quickly with the new framework. Fast API is very beginner friendly. So the documentation is absolutely amazing. So if you have a chance, go check out the documentation online. So yes, use it if you want to get up and running quickly, use Fast API. So Ice Lady lunges toward you, and you remember what your tech lead said earlier. To kill the evil Ice Lady, you just say these words 3 times. Melt, melt, melt. The evil internet Ice Lady melts away forever. The internet is restored to the world, and you get to binge watch all of your favorite shows again. And you, my friend, are the hero. The end. So we have a freebie for you. As I mentioned earlier, I work for Vonage, and we have a lot of cool APIs like video, voice, SMS. And so if you'd here is a free coupon code to try our APIs. You can just take a screenshot of this. The coupon code is in my favorite color in the hot pink border there, as you can see. We give you 10 euros of free credit to use our APIs to build something, some cool stuff. It's redeemable until November 5th, 2021, I believe. Yeah, so use it, go and download it before then. Then you can use it. So thank you so much for your time today. And also thank you to the PyData Global team for putting together this amazing conference and for having me as a speaker this year. And I would love to hear from you. So this is where you can find me. I'm on Twitter, just at Tonya Simmons. So reach out and we'll chat about sports, coding, FastAPI, Flask, or whatever else. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thank you. I really love the storytelling. That was great.
Thank you.
We have a question here that I spotted.
Okay, sure.
So Roger Webb is asking if there's a way to generate Pydantic models from SQL Alchemy models and/or swap SQL Alchemy out for Pydantic.
Ooh, I actually don't know. Actually, that's a great question. I'm not sure.
I did a cheeky Google, and actually Sebastian Ramirez, the creator of FastAPI, has a plugin for SQL for exactly that use case. It's experimental, but everything that guy puts out that is experimental usually is pretty good.
Yeah, he's really. Is that the one he just released like about a month or two ago?
Might be. Yeah.
The plugin for that. Yeah. Sebastian's really awesome.
And maybe the last minute question, does FastAPI provide a similar testing tools as Flask?
I believe so, yeah, with PyTest, right, is the default, yeah.
In the past, I've also used like Hypothesis to do automated testing of like endpoints. There's like a quite nice integration. So
Hypothesis.
And with the asynchronous, and it's called like schema thesis, and then you can just test API endpoints, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, that is really neat. It's very cool.
Excellent. With this, thank you again so much. That was a fantastic talk. I hope you and everybody else enjoy the rest of the conference, and see you in the next talk.
All right. Thank you, Florian. You guys have a good day or good night, wherever you are. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.